Chapter 7. Bringing Order to English. Charles I, the son of James I, was not a popular king, and in 1642 war began between those who wanted him to be king and those who did not. In 1649 he was killed, and England, Wales and Scotland remained without a king until 1660, when his son Charles II returned to England. Charles II died in 1685, and his brother James became king in 1685. But James II was so unpopular that in 1688 he left England and was replaced by his daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange. All these changes made people wish for order and regularity in their lives, and some people also wanted more regularity in their language. The great growth in new words between 1530 and 1660, the fastest in the history of the language, had left people uncertain. What was happening to the language? If so many foreign and newly made words continued to come into it, would it remain English? Some people in England wanted to create an official organisation to control the English language, similar to the Accademia della Crusca, which had been started in Italy in 1582, and the Académie Française, which had been started in France in 1635. One of these people was the writer Jonathan Swift, who in 1712 wrote, "A proposal for correcting, improving and ascertaining the English tongue." Ascertain here means fix. Swift disliked spelling changes, newly fashionable words, the habit of shortening words, and bad grammar. He wanted a group of people to fix the language by making grammar rules, making lists of words that were incorrect, and deciding on correct spellings. The idea never succeeded, partly because other people realized that change in a language was unavoidable. But it made people think about the need for everyone to use the same spelling and grammar. As a result, different spelling guides, dictionaries and grammar books began to appear. Although printing had brought some regularity into spelling, many variations had remained in the 16th century, even for personal names. For example, there are 6 known examples of Shakespeare's name that he wrote himself, and in each one he spelt his name differently. People used their own spellings, which usually showed their own pronunciation. Other variations were introduced to show that words came from Latin. For example, the letter O was put into people, the letter B into doubt, and the letter C into scissors, because the Latin words populus, dubitare, and scisorium had these letters, and different spellings were given to words like sonne, son, a male child, and sunne, sun, the star that gives light, which sounded the same but had different meanings. In the end, this freedom to change spellings led to confusion. In the 17th century, people wanted to end this confusion, and the appearance of the first English dictionaries slowly brought about more regularity in spelling. During the 18th century, ways of spelling that differed from these dictionaries were seen as incorrect and a sign of stupidity or a bad education. Even today, many people do not like making spelling mistakes and often use the spell check tool on their computers. Dictionaries were not unknown before the 17th century, but they were Latin-English ones. The first English-English dictionary appeared in 1604 and was written by a schoolteacher called Robert Corddry. It was called A Table Alphabetical and was a list of about 2,500 hard, usual English words, with explanations of their meaning and sometimes which language they had come from, French or Greek. Here are some examples of the words in the table. French. Accomplish, finish or make an end of. Barbarian, a rude person. Eclipse, Greek, a failing of the light of the sun or moon. Obsolete, old, past date, grown out of use or custom. A table alphabetical became very popular, and similar dictionaries followed. In the 18th century, dictionary writers began explaining more ordinary words, not just difficult ones. In 1746, a group of booksellers asked a young writer called Samuel Johnson to prepare an English dictionary. Johnson worked on this dictionary for 9 years, with the help of 6 other people. For 3 years, he read the works of hundreds of English writers and found examples for words in the dictionary. Then he began to write the meanings of the words. He chose hard words, but also many ordinary ones. When Johnson's A Dictionary of the English Language appeared in 1755, it was an immediate success. It explained more than 42,000 words, and, as well as the meaning of each word, it gave the pronunciation and history of the word, and sometimes how it was used. A cant word was used only by one group. A low word was informal and not suitable for writing. Johnson gave as many different meanings of a word as he could. There are 66 for take. He very often gave an example from literature to show how the word was used. In fact, there are about 114,000 examples in the dictionary, and they are a very large part of it. Most of them come from literature written between 1560 and 1660. Here are some examples of words and their meanings from Johnson's dictionary. To bubble, to cheat, a cant word. To nab, nappa, Swedish. To catch unexpectedly, to seize without warning, a word seldom used but in low language. Woman, weefman, weeman, Saxon, whence we yet pronounce women in the plural, women. The female of the human race. That man who hath a tongue is no man, if with his tongue he cannot win a woman. Shakespeare. Yellow boy, a gold coin. A very low word. To bubble and yellow boy have both disappeared from English, but to nab has survived with this meaning. It is still an informal word. The dictionary was not perfect. Some of Johnson's explanations were harder to understand than the words themselves. Some expressed his personal opinions, and some words were not listed because he disliked them. Also, he could not fit in all his examples, so words at the end of the dictionary have fewer examples than those at the beginning. However, it remained the most important English dictionary in Britain for more than a century. Help with spelling came from dictionaries. Help with grammar came from grammars. There had been a few grammar books in the 16th and 17th centuries, but in the second half of the 18th century, a very large number suddenly appeared. Many of them told the reader how to write and speak correctly, which really meant how to use language in the same way as in serious pieces of literature. They were written for the rich, and aimed to show the difference between the upper and lower classes. They were widely used because people wanted to show that they were educated. The writers of these grammar books considered that the grammar of much spoken language and of regional dialects, especially Scots, was wrong. They believed that the grammar of English should be the same as that of Latin. For example, they thought that a sentence should not end with a preposition, because this did not happen in Latin. So, it would be correct to say, I like the town in which I live, but not, I like the town which I live in. The two most widely used grammar books were Robert Louth's Short Introduction to English Grammar, which appeared in 1762, and Lindley Murray's English Grammar of 1795. These books had a great effect on people's views of grammar in the 19th and 20th centuries, and still have some effect today. Some people believe that there is only one correct way of saying things, and argue, for example, about whether it is correct to say different to or different from. As a result, many first-language speakers of English think that the way they speak and write is incorrect, and are ashamed of it. The opposite view, that all ways of expressing an idea are grammatically correct if they can be understood clearly, and that grammar is always changing, is becoming more popular. As a result, some grammar books today simply describe how English is used, instead of telling us how we should speak or write. There were also some attempts in the second half of the 18th century to decide on one correct pronunciation. There were many different ways of pronouncing words, as there were a large number of regional accents. Until this time, regional accents were not considered to be bad in any way or to be a disadvantage. However, many people now wanted to speak correctly as well as write correctly. The first person to teach people correct English pronunciation was an Irishman called Thomas Sheridan. In the 1750s and 1760s, he gave talks to large numbers of important people about the correct sounds and pronunciation of English words. Like correct spelling and grammar, correct pronunciation was a sign of education and class. Sheridan wrote in one of his talks,
"Pronunciation is a sort of proof that a person has kept good company."
Sheridan was followed by John Walker, who wrote A Critical Pronouncing Dictionary and Expositor of the English Language in 1791. He took the pronunciation of educated people in London as his guide, and saw other regional pronunciations as wrong. His dictionary was very successful in both Britain and the US in the 19th century. Many people began to feel disadvantaged because they did not speak correctly. It was a long time before regional accents became acceptable again. Chapter 8. Modern English Grows. If speakers of English from 1800 were able to speak to those of today, they would notice a few differences in grammar and pronunciation, but not very many. For the 19th century speakers, the biggest problem would be the extremely large number of new words they would meet. The developments in science in the last 200 years have led to hundreds of thousands of new words and expressions for new ideas, machines, materials, plants, animals, stars, diseases, and medicines. Many of these words and expressions are used only by scientists, but others have become part of ordinary English. We know that if we have bronchitis, this word first appeared in writing in 1814, we can take antibiotics, 1944. And we know that our genes, 1911, come to us from our parents in our DNA, 1944. We argue about whether we should use pesticides, 1934, in farming, or nuclear energy, 1945, to make electricity. The use of English in different parts of the world, and easier and faster communication, have together resulted in the appearance of thousands of other new words. Most of them, about 65%, have been made by putting two old words together, for example, fingerprint, 1859, airport, 1919, and streetwise, 1965. The world of computers has introduced many of this type. Online, 1950. User-friendly, 1977. And download, 1980. Some new words have been made from Latin and Greek. For example, photograph, 1839, helicopter, 1872, aeroplane, 1874, and video, 1958. Others are old words that have been given new meanings. For example, pilot, 1907, was first used to mean the person who directs the path of ships, and cassette, 1960, used to mean a small box. About 5% of new words have come from foreign languages, like disco, 1964, from French, and pizza, 1935, from Italian. And a few words have come from the names of things we buy or use. For example, to Google, 1999, from Google, the popular internet search engine, and podcast, 2004. This word, meaning a recording that you can get from the internet and play on your computer, comes from iPod, the popular music player, and broadcast. Beginnings or endings have been added to make new words. Disinformation, 1955, is false information. Touchy-feely, 1972, describes people who express their feelings too openly. Sometimes both a beginning and an ending have been added. For example, unputdownable, 1947, describes a book which is so interesting that you cannot stop reading it. Some words have been shortened. Photo, 1860, for photograph. Plane, 1908, for aeroplane. And TV, 1948, for television. Some words have put together sounds from two other words. For example, motel, 1925, a hotel for car drivers, is made from motor and hotel. Only a very few new words have not been made from other words. Two examples are nylon, 1938, to describe a man-made material, and flip-flop, 1970, a type of shoe that makes a noise as you walk. The growth in vocabulary is clear when we look at the making of the Oxford English Dictionary, OED, in the 19th and 20th centuries. This dictionary contains all English words since 1150, even those that are no longer used. It shows, with examples, when each word was first used in writing, and how the meaning of a word has changed over the centuries. Finding all this information was a very big job, although no one realised at the beginning exactly how big. A Scotsman called James Murray was appointed as the Director of Work on the dictionary in 1879, and the plan was to finish the job in 10 years. Murray organised a very large reading programme. Hundreds of people sent him examples of how words were used. After 5 years, the first part of the dictionary was completed, but it only went from A to ANT. Everyone realised that the job was going to take a lot longer than 10 years. In fact, it took another 44. Sadly, Murray did not live to see its completion. He died in 1915, aged 78, while he was working on the letter U. However, he knew that he had helped to make a dictionary which would give a detailed history of the English language. The first OED was completed in 1928 and explained the meaning and history of 414,800 words and expressions, with examples from literature and other writing. The second OED, completed in 1989, explained the meanings of 615,100 words, although many of these, perhaps 20%, are no longer used. It shows how the words were or are used, and has 2.5 million examples from all kinds of books. It contains some scientific words, and words from North America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the Caribbean, India, and Pakistan, but not all scientific or regional words in English. The second OED went online in 2000, and every 3 months, new material is added to this online dictionary as part of the writing of the third OED. At the same time, work is continuing on the words and meanings already in the dictionary, and changes are made if necessary. For some words, there are more details of their history to add, or earlier or later examples. North American and other regional pronunciations are given, as well as British ones. These are the first changes to Murray's work since the first OED appeared in 1928. The work on the third OED, begun in 1993, will probably finish in 2018. The OED has had a great effect on our knowledge and understanding of English. It has given us a lot of information about the history of words and expressions, and has helped us understand how language changes over time. The way dictionaries are made has been changed by computers. There are now extremely large collections of examples of English works on computer that dictionary writers can use. They can look through these for examples of words and see how they are used, and they can use the internet to search for words. They can also ask readers all over the world to send examples to a website, which means that they can get words from a very wide variety of places. Information about informal words and slang, for example, is now much easier to find because of the internet. And when a dictionary is written, it can be kept on computer and put on a website. For about the past 100 years, new words have been able to travel fast around the English-speaking world because of the telephone, newspapers, radio, television, films, pop music, and the internet. These ways of communication can reach extremely large numbers of people. Television and radio have also influenced pronunciation. In the 1920s, the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, chose an accent for all its speakers to use on the radio. This was the accent of the educated, people in government, at the universities, in the army and the church. It was known as Received Pronunciation, or RP, or the King's English. The use of RP on radio and later on television meant that more people heard it and thought that it was the accent that socially important people used. It was not acceptable to use strong regional accents on television and radio, or in teaching and government. However, in the 1960s, social differences in Britain began to break down, and regional accents became more acceptable everywhere. And as the number of radio and television programs grew, more people with different accents had to be employed. Today, RP is no longer an important accent, and most educated people in England, not Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, now speak a kind of RP which has some of their regional accent in it. Television has also made some regional dialects popular. For example, you can now hear parts of the dialect called Estuary English, which is from London and the southeast of England, in many other parts of England. See Chapter 10 for more about dialects. The biggest technological development in recent years is, of course, the internet. People can now communicate in writing on their websites, through email, on message boards, and in chat rooms. The internet has had a number of effects on English. Firstly, new words have been made to describe the internet itself and its activities. For example, cyberspace, 1982, email, 1982, website, 1993, and blog, 1999. Or, new meanings have been given to old words, for example, link, 1951, chat, 1985, virtual, 1987, and surf, 1992. Secondly, people have developed a new, informal way of writing in chat rooms and on message boards. Many users shorten a lot of words, using just single letters or numbers, and often they do not use capital letters or much punctuation. Many use their own spellings, or spellings that are often used in chat rooms. Some people also use smileys, little pictures of faces with different expressions, to show how they feel. They also use groups of letters for some expressions. For example, LOL means laughing out loud. BTW means by the way. BBL means be back later. Sentences you could see in a chat room or on a message board are RUALRYT, are you all right? I am good, THX smiley. I'm good, thanks. DUZ NE1, know how to make carrot cake. Does anyone know how to make carrot cake? People also use similar language when they send messages by phone. For example, THX 4 UR MSG stop. How are you? Thanks for your message. How are you? I am fine stop. See you at work. I'm fine. See you at work. After learning the rules of written English at school, many people are now enjoying playing with language, breaking the old rules and making new ones.